so much.
Oh, I'm gonna go this way.
Go in there.
Yeah,
Thank you.
corner pocket.
You want to be the rose between two
Yeah.
thorns?
Oh, you want me to sit in the middle? All right. Go ahead.
So we're going to talk a little bit about geography. Is there anybody from Silicon Valley here? Any hands? Oh, I heard a
Just
whistle.
one.
I was hoping there'd be somebody to challenge you guys, just
one
in case they want to call BS on something you say. Feel free. We are going to take questions. But to get started, I would like to ask each of you, Ken McElrath, Cynthia Kay, and Todd Olson, if you would just tell us briefly a little bit what your company does and why it is where it is. Starting with you.
Why it is where
Ken?
it is, that's going to be tough. So my company is Squid, and we are based in Chattanooga. We are an innovation platform. Essentially, you can create apps without writing any code. It's a pretty revolutionary concept. Why we are where we are is actually related to my sons, who both decided to go to college and right outside of Chattanooga at this little school called Covenant College. And I was looking to relocate a previous business, which was launched in the Bay Area, to the Eastern time zone. But going back and forth, dropping them off to college, I fell in love with this little city called Chattanooga, and I said, you know, it's like 1/3 the cost of the Bay Area. I should check this out.
Which is where you were before?
Yeah.
So you decided to go from Silicon Valley to Chattanooga to start your business?
Silicon Valley through Phoenix to Chattanooga.
Got it.
Yeah.
Cynthia, you have an ed tech
Yeah.
company outside Atlanta?
Yep, we're outside of Atlanta, Live Studios, and we provide this really cool augmented reality with animals to teach kids how to read and do math, and get our kids proficient in reading by 3rd grade. And at Atlanta, and the reason why, well, I've lived there with my husband for, I don't know, 28 years, and it just seemed like we're there, let's just do it, and it's a real friendly place to grow a business, so that's the net of it.
Todd, you're in Raleigh?
Great, yeah. I am in Raleigh, North Carolina. My company's called Pendo, and we help companies improve their user experiences. So we install the software applications, we collect all the user behavior, and then enable those companies to put messages in front of their customers to help them use their software more successfully. And why I'm in Raleigh, I think it's for similar reasons. You know, I got recruited down there at one point for a company. We then sold that company to a Bay Area company. I was actually then living in the Bay Area and decided, you know, we're having a better life on the East Coast, and decided to make Raleigh a little more permanent. And I have family on the East Coast, and I think once you settle down and have a few kids and you get kind of embedded in the community, yeah, that's why we're there.
So the first thing that always comes up is when it comes time to raise money, can you do it from someplace that's not in the Bay Area? How did that go for you, Ken?
Can you raise money? Yes, you can. Can you raise money on good terms? That's a different question. So,
Tell us a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, so our experience, both of our Series A and our Series B were led by companies on the West Coast. So.
And what did you have to do? I'm assuming they didn't come to Chattanooga, did they?
Actually, they did.
Did they?
Yeah. Yeah, it's. I think that there's a kind of an awakening that's going on within the venture
How long
community.
ago was this?
Well, we did our Series A about 2 years ago. Just closed our Series B. So
Did it bother them that you were in Chattanooga? Were they worried about the relationship?
Well, not the folks that we chose. No, I mean we had a lot of interest in our rounds. I think for our Series B, I probably interviewed about 75 different firms, narrowed it down to a list of 10, and that list of 10 we invited to come, and they all came.
Really?
So, yeah, it's like I said, this awakening is occurring where they're realizing that between the coasts there's a whole lot of value. Their money goes a lot further. So you can raise, I mean, our Series B was probably the size of a company in Silicon Valley Series A, which is a little hard for them to get their heads around, but when they realize how far their money can go and that you have a legitimate business, and it's just, you know, ROI.
Did you move from the Bay Area to Chattanooga knowing that you were going to raise money, or you were looking to bootstrap for a little while
Oh yeah,
and
we
take advantage of
Yeah, for the first 2 years we bootstrapped. And then we did our Series A. So that, again, it's a little weird for most folks to realize that you can actually do that. Bootstrap a company. You can do it here. You couldn't have, I could not have done it in the Bay Area.
Cynthia, you've done it in Atlanta as well.
Yes, I started 3 years ago, used our own money, but I found 3 angel investors. But even then, it was really bootstrapping. But it's so, your money can go a lot further than typically on the West Coast or even or Northeast.
The talent doesn't suffer either. I mean, you get really awesome people. I mean,
Okay, let's come back to that.
Yeah.
Let's stick with the
Take
finance
that ahead of
first.
yourself.
yeah, sorry.
But hold that thought. Cynthia, your angel investors, they're all
Right.
local from Atlanta?
Yeah, so both of them Atlanta, one's in Spain, but I knew him in the States for a while first, so. But yes, it was local.
And at one point, you did have some interest in raising venture capital.
Well, so that was 3 years ago. Well, I needed to get we started growing, and so we needed some more cash. And so I started looking for money again, and it was VCs and angels, and we finally found another angel significantly. It was a partner angel, if you will, because it was a big chunk of change. But they were very closely aligned to our core values, which I love, because it was a trick trying to find somebody that matched our values and would give us money. And you really have to go to a lot of people to find that, but we did it, and it's been a good fit.
Did you think it made a difference being in the Atlanta area?
I
Plus or
just-
minus?
I like it because, first of all, my customers are all over the country, so I'm out of that airport, direct flights everywhere. But the environment is so friendly, very startup friendly, and the money I can make, $50,000 probably go 2 or 3 times more than if I was somewhere else than in the Southeast. I really believe that, so it's been very helpful.
How about you, Todd? What's your experience been?
Yeah, so, I think, I've always said that the hardest thing about starting a company in Raleigh has been access to capital. There's just fewer options, right? I think our hardest rounds were definitely our seed rounds, which were, the first round that we raised, and we decided not to bootstrap, and we wanted to raise money to give ourselves some runway to see if we can get some traction just because of the market conditions, and we wanted to go faster. And that was the most stressful round by a large degree. We raised $1 million seed, and one of the challenges is that I'm seeing, and I meet with a lot of entrepreneurs, and this is a lot of the seed rounds are. Someone the other day in my office said that 325 seems to be the raise amount that they can get, and when you're raising such small amounts of capital, you're spending all your time raising money. You can't build a company, and that sucks. So we were fortunate. A prior investor of mine in Washington, D.C. led the round, and we're able to bring together a consortium of other East Coast investors, including some from the region, to do our first seed round. And from there, we're able to build, hit the milestones we needed to attract money from outside the area. And our Series A was out of Boston, but there's also the global firm, so they have Silicon Valley presence as well. And then we executed well after that, and then we have now taken money from Silicon Valley as well. And now I think it doesn't much matter. I think it's an advantage maybe being where we are for talent and other things. Once you get to a certain stage, you're getting measured on revenue multiples, things like that. I mean, we benchmark just like any other company. It doesn't matter where we are. So I think geography doesn't matter once you get past a certain stage.
Yeah.
Was it ever a problem for you in terms of the relationship with your investors, spending enough time with them, feeling comfortable with them?
Well, I think early on investors, if they're running a small check, they're not going to get a plain on a small check. That makes sense to me. And I got really frustrated a few times because there was a VC in Silicon Valley that really wanted to do a deal, and he just basically said no for geography. And
Did he try to convince you to come out there?
Oh, yeah. And I told him, look, this is my kid situation, and this is what they're in, and no, I am not leaving, definitively. There's zero chance I can leave. And he's like, fine, I'm out, and that's okay. Probably the right call, and ended up working out great for us anyway. But, I think it's one of those things, it is a little painful at first, but now, they get on the plane. Like, as Ken said, all of the investors we have now from outside the area have visited. That's a prerequisite to even give us a term sheet to visit. I don't want people that aren't willing to make the trek, so to speak. And you're part of the company, and you can't just expect us to constantly travel. So most of our board meetings are in Raleigh. And yeah, the business is there, so they should be willing to visit and be part of it.
So let's talk about talent. How has that been for you, Ken, in Chattanooga?
So we started out with some great people to begin with, but
You started out with them. They moved as well.
a couple of them did, yeah. One came down from New York, another one came from Wyoming, but they wanted to be in Chattanooga, and they wanted to work together. They're a tight-knit group of friends, all cross-country runners, and so there was a bond there. But, and then they started pulling in their friends. And some moved in, some were already in town, but we kind of grew organically for the first couple of years just by pulling in people who were kind of like-minded and had the talent that we need. And then when we started, scaling and growing to the point where we're growing right now, now it's been relatively easy because
How many employees do you have?
we're 165 today, but it's if we were a 165-person company in Silicon Valley, that's nothing, right? In Chattanooga, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
So we're getting 150 applications a day from people who want to work for our company. It just wouldn't have happened if we were in the Bay Area. So it's been great for us.
And do you feel you're getting the quality people that
We
you
could always
need?
get more. I would love to have more. And I think Chattanooga's done a fantastic job of marketing itself, nationwide, worldwide even. And so there's a growing population of people who want to get involved in tech that I don't know what you call it, a dynamic where people can come into a town working for one startup and realize, well, even if that one doesn't quite make it, I can jump to another startup. That's starting to happen in Chattanooga. And that means more tech talent is going to come into that area. So, the gig has really helped Chattanooga. But there's a lot of cool stuff happening in that city that has it's really helped us to grow the way that we have. So, but even if I was in Silicon Valley, trying to get talent in Silicon Valley is it's really pulling teeth. It's worse than pulling teeth. It's like root canal. So,
And then if you get them,
yeah, you have to hold
hang on to
them, right?
Yeah.
And hope that somebody doesn't come in and outbid you for them. So, being a somewhat large fish in a mid-sized city is a great place to be versus being a tiny little nit in a giant ocean.
how's it been for you, Cynthia?
No, it's been great. So we started developing an augmented reality about 7 to 6 years ago, so it was pretty cutting edge. But all of our talent is all local. We develop everything really in Gwinnett County in Georgia. A lot of the colleges, the art institutes, and a lot of great talent. And so it's not been an issue, very passionate folks. I'm really big into talented, but have a passion for what you're doing. And
How many
that's been
employees
an
do you
asset.
have?
There's only 8, but we're going to get there.
Yeah.
But that's, we're just starting with a small group. Of course, it just was like 3 it was me, and my husband, but then we keep going. So
We started with 5. It was 4 years ago.
Absolutely.
Dream big.
Yeah.
Todd?
Yeah, similar. Great experience, great talent. I think we're in an area that has 3 very good universities in a close proximity, and we take advantage of that all the time. Whether it's not just hiring students out of those universities, but the universities draw people to the area. Maybe they went to school at Carolina, then went to New York for a few years, and then want to start a family and come back, or maybe a partner is becoming a professor at Duke and they want to move to the area. So it attracts really cool people, and we absolutely take advantage of it. I think I could always have more. I think I think in general there's fewer software engineers than there are software engineering positions in the world.
Yes.
And I think that every city is going to be faced with that problem. I would take any good software engineer that comes in our door. We would gladly accept them with a welcome, open arms. As Ken said, I think not having to worry about Google and Facebook counter offering our people twice the salaries we offer is a benefit of being in the region. So I think it's generally speaking, yeah, it's competitive. There's other great companies there, but it's not as competitive as it is, say, out in the Bay Area. I think if anything is a challenge, and Ken started to mention, and I think it's attracting experienced executive talent is something that is very, very, very hard. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to move to Raleigh. I'm going to move my family there, and then what if I'm not a good fit in the company 3 months from now? What do I do? And really, I don't have a good answer. It's like, well, you can try to find something else like us, but there aren't 4 others, there aren't 5 others, maybe 1 other, 2 others if you're lucky. And that's the problem, is the lack of critical mass. That you can find those people, but you have to sell really, really, really hard, and they have to feel really good about the opportunity. So not impossible, just harder.
So how do you weigh that, the struggle to get executives versus the availability of engineering talent? Does one clearly override the other?
No, I think, well, you need everything, and then you just got to be flexible and make sure you find the right people. And I mean, even engineering talent now, I think, we've debated internally whether to create another office, in another city less populated than where we are. Like, we could open a Pittsburgh office, for example, because I went to CMU and I have ties there. And so we're always constantly looking for creative ways to find more engineering talent, because a more product-focused company, and engineers are big kind of lifeblood of what we do.
So you all make it sound pretty good in each of your situations. Tell us, is there one thing in particular that you would change if you could? Is there one frustration being, a little bit off the beaten path, given that you're running tech companies?
Just one thing?
You can give us a couple.
I want a better airport in Chattanooga.
Are you working on that?
No, I wish. So no, it's a big deal. But other than that, I think that I can kind of see where Chattanooga is going to be about 10 years from now. I wish that the Chattanooga 10 years from now had existed 10 years ago. And that level of impatience that I have with seeing people kind of come around to what this could mean for their economy. So that's one thing that I wish was different.
What impact would that have on you?
Would have been
speeding up
easier
those
to
10
raise.
years?
It would have been easier to raise a round up front from local investors versus going to the coasts. There's still a lot of hesitancy towards investing in tech companies.
Locally.
Locally, it's changing, right? So Chattanooga, its legacy is manufacturing, and so that's something that there are a lot of people in town. They understand what that looks like, what it feels like, how to build a successful manufacturing company. But this whole tech thing it's a mystery to a lot of folks. Now that's changing very quickly, but again, it's never quickly enough. So in a lot of ways, it feels like you get on a plane in Chattanooga, you fly to Silicon Valley, and you've entered a completely different world, where you speak a language in Silicon Valley that is clearly understood. And then you come back to Chattanooga, and if you speak that language, they don't know what you're talking about at times, right?
Did it make a huge difference for you that you had been of that world, that you'd been in the Bay Area? If you had just started your business in Chattanooga, would it have been dramatically different for you, do you think?
That's a hypothetical question I can't respond to.
You have to answer. That's the rule.
Yeah, yeah. So those are, I think, the big things. Easier access to capital when you're trying to launch was a huge thing, and just having that kind of group of people who understands that. And I think the beauty of that, there's always the opposite side, right? Is that there are a group of people in Chattanooga who are doing this right now. And that next generation that comes behind us is going to be the beneficiaries of that. And so, and that's an intentional decision, right? I decided when VC said, well, if you were out here, we'd fund you. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. We have to make intentional decisions to grow our own communities and make that happen for the next group. Which is why we just rented 3 floors in a tower in Chattanooga and didn't move the company to the Bay Area, because somebody's got to put a stake in the ground and say, no, it can happen here.
How about you, Cynthia? Is there frustrations in
Yeah,
Atlanta?
listening to him. So I'm trying to think. 3 years plus of growing the company in my basement from nothing. And probably the most frustrating thing was talking to people, getting them to understand what you're trying to do, because it's all local, and how many people you have to keep saying it over. And it seems like I'd be reading in magazines in California that if you had like a half-baked idea, and we'll give you $5 million, here you go. And I'm just trying to look for, you know, $500,000 for a product that's actually selling. It just seemed really hard, I mean, because it was. And, but eventually you start finding these people. So having events like this, I think, is fantastic. And start creating this, because, you know, what an opportunity, because I'm not going anywhere. I'm invested in our community. I want to create jobs for our community. And it's a lot of fun. I like doing it this way. So I wouldn't change it. But I love that we're doing this type of thing. We need to do more of it, educating the investors, and just making it a little bit easier for these companies to start up and not be so crazy stressful, because now we're doing really, really well. But it took a few people to believe with us. It'd be nice if there was a few more out there to help, you know, the startups and the companies.
Todd?
I think two things. I think one of the first thing is the lack of peer networking is really, really tough. You know, and there are just not a lot of CEOs in my hometown that I can go have coffee with that have the same problems I do. Because it's a very lonely job, and I can't really commiserate. I mean, commiserate's the wrong word. I can't like complain necessarily to my management team about them, essentially. There just aren't 10 other people, 10 other companies that are exact phase that are going through the things that we're going through, and that's hard. And I get invited to some great events where I get to do that, but they're one-off things, like twice a year, 3 times a year. And I go to the Bay Area and I have lots of great conversations. A lot of software as a service companies in our portfolio, so we share investors. They just don't live where I live, and that's. Video conference isn't the same. Having a beer with someone, having a coffee is much, much better. So I think that's the first thing that really bums me out, that I don't get to do as often as I like, and I really love it when I do it. I get a ton out of that kind of stuff, and so that's number one. The second thing, which has actually caused us to start forming an office in the Bay Area, is just we sell a lot out there. We have a big market presence. And I found myself, it was like a month ago, where we had a customer prospect that wanted us to visit, and it was in San Luis Obispo. And I mean, it is really hard to get to San Luis Obispo from Raleigh. I mean, my admin did like 4 different ways to get there, and all of them which were like sheer pain. And I asked myself, like, how important is this meeting? But then at the end of the day, it came down to, if we live there and our competitors are there, would they be there? And the answer was, of course they would be there. It's only a short hop away. Well, then we have to be there. I don't care if it's personally awful. I will do it. And sure enough, I think I had 20 hours of flying time and travel time for a 90-minute meeting. And it's the right thing. I don't want to lose. At the end of the day, I can't let our geography ever be a reason that we lose any deal ever. And we want all of them. So now we're going to open an office out there. So we already started, figuring out what that. What?
You're opening an office in SLO?
No, in San Francisco. But
okay.
but
Great
San
surfing.
Francisco is much closer to SLO than Raleigh is, and that's just one example of something where, as you start to scale your go-to-market team, you need to have good geographic representation to make sure you're not losing on anything, and because you want to be aggressive, you want to be in the customer's office if there's opportunities there, and so that to me is imperative.
We have a few minutes left. Do we have any questions from you guys? Any hands?
There's a hand up here, I think.
I'm a Silicon Valley expat here now in the Southeast, so I'm with you guys. So I heard a lot of similar commonalities in your experience amongst them, recruiting, management, and intellectual stimulation or intellectual curiosity circles where you live. Do you feel any impulse of your own to form those groups, given your attention you have to devote to your companies? And if not, where can that happen? How could that happen in Nashville? How could that happen in Chattanooga? How could that happen in the Research Triangle?
As to an impulse, I'll start, sorry. Impulse, no, I have no desire to do that. I was joking with a guy here, John Bragdon, earlier that 8 years ago, we would find each other in a restaurant, just sit down and talk and say hi and how's it going. And now he's flying to LA, I'm flying to San Francisco, and it's like we never see each other and we live in the same city. So the reason I would say no is because trying to pull together a group of 5 CEOs that are at our stage right now would be virtually impossible. It's hard enough for me to get my management team together, let alone get 5 CEOs together in a room. So that would be kind of masochistic to try that. But it's a really good question to ask. It's a question that actually one of our lead investor for our Series B is strongly asking right now. They're trying to figure out how do we come around our CEOs, because they really are lonely. They really are struggling in many ways. There's got to be a better way to support these guys other than going to a board meeting and giving them the.
Todd, you mentioned this. Have you tried to do anything in Raleigh?
No. I'm the wrong person to try to do anything like that. So I'm running my company. I don't have time to create a networking group. I mean, but I welcome other people that try. And I think it is something that is important. And if an entrepreneur reaches out to me and say, hey, I want to meet with you, I have a bunch of questions, assuming it fits into my schedule, I generally do a lot of those meetings where I try to give back to the community. That's something I've tried to invest in a lot. But one of the other things that we didn't talk about, I actually don't know, well, I guess Ken mentioned kids, but I'm working so much as it is. I also have a family. I have 4 kids. I mean, I don't need more events in my evening to fill time, right? So it has. We're busy, and a lot of people move to this part of the country to have families, and I have a packed schedule, and I have dance recitals and other things, and I miss a lot of those. I'm missing something tonight, I think, and that's okay, but I do that in my normal course of my life. So creating another thing to take time away from my already responsibility, so to speak, it's hard. It's very, very, very hard. So.
Yeah.
Another question.
Way in the back.
I work with a small town here in Tennessee, and I was just wondering, how can a small town attract these new tech startups and companies?
I was thinking our chamber in Gwinnett County, the chamber has been really pro business and startups. So I don't know if you might want to start with the chamber, and because they've been great about doing national attractions and bringing people in, and you might want to try that.
Another a resource that I'd recommend to you is a group called Co-Starters, which actually came out of a group in Chattanooga called Co-Lab. And they've got a great program that they've put together to actually help smaller cities, mid-sized cities, to kind of come together around building an entrepreneurial community. I think it's co.starters. So check that out. Great resource.
Maybe one more? Up here in the balcony?
I've got a loud voice. If you can hear me, you can repeat the question.
I will.
Let's do that. So I am a Silicon Valley guy, so I live in the bubble. And one of the things that I've kind of noticed in this conversation, what you guys said is kind of interesting. When you're a little bit of an older entrepreneur, you have probably different priorities and different responsibilities. I feel like there's a little bit of an age difference. And if you guys have ever read the book by Dan Lyons called Disrupted, it talks about this. Do you think that that has something to do with geography? That maybe if you're a 20-something, if you can get your nights to the event, maybe you should be in a San Francisco
So the question is about the difference age makes. Maybe it makes sense for someone in their 20s or 30s to be in a Silicon Valley type area, to take advantage of it and to devote every waking hour to building a business. But maybe it makes more sense when you have a family to look for an alternative.
I mean, I can start off just quick. I mean, I started as my third company. I started my first one right out of college in my early 20s. And yeah, I went to all those events. I worked until 2 or 3 in the morning. The outcome is a lot worse than it's going right now. So, you know, and you know, you don't, and some of it was my age and lack of experience, some of which is just the idea, and the market is always different and changing, you know. The person's the same, but, you know, you get a lot smarter. So, you know, I don't know. I mean, I think, you know, we still work really, really hard. I know there's a big debate actually on Twitter on working harder versus smarter, and I've been reading this debate, and I've thought about chiming in on it. I mean, I think you do have to work really, really hard. I mean, I put my kids to bed, and I work until midnight often, you know. I mean, it's not just working smart. I'm also, I care about my time a lot more, and sometimes going to a networking event with a bunch of people that can't help me, no, I'm not going to go. I mean, I'll be blunt. You know, I go to very few of those. I try to get out of ones that people try to sign me up for. Those are an absolute waste of my time. The free drinks. No, I don't
How did
need
they
free
get
alcohol.
you here?
I know.
That's a great question. No, I got invited by someone, you know, and it seemed like a cool event. But yeah, no, I think you have to be very, very aggressive with your time, and I think that's okay.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that, though, what you're saying. This is my second company, and I think the older I've gotten, your time is really precious. I have 4 kids. Now they're getting a lot older now, and I work, gosh, it seems like even harder now, and I try to work smarter too, but I think you start to value stuff differently. You want to do something, for me anyway, I want to do something that has a cause or make money and give back, and being in the Southeast where we're at, that's where my family's at, it just makes sense, and I want to do that there. And I think that should be true for any age, even young, but I'm not sure when you're that young, you're thinking that way, because I probably wasn't until later.
I think we're out of time. Ken McElrath, Cynthia Kay, Todd Olson, thank you for forsaking your family obligations to share your experiences. We appreciate it.
Thank you.